and to get this started. Thank you so much for coming up with this idea, Lisa, for the Harry team, and for being here today.
Good morning, Jan. Thank you so much. Everyone hear me okay? First of all, I just want to say it's so nice to see so many familiar faces. Katie, Laura, Samantha, we've all worked with so many of you, either as clients or through Westchester's just not that big. And our peers in the industry, I see you on this call, and I'm sure we want to keep our comments really to 30, 35 minutes. I'm sure we all have a lot to learn from each other, and we have lots of time for questions and conversations at the end. We just have a few slides. The first one just has our faces, which you can see, but just for introductions, again, I'm Lisa. I'm Chief Communications Officer at Harry, and I'll let Jen and Mo introduce themselves as well.
Hi, I'm Jen Galluzzo. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at Harry.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mo. I'm the Senior Digital Marketing Manager at Harry.
So I'm going to take about 10 minutes and just talk about three things. One, how the marketing landscape has changed. Two, what you should be saying about your nonprofit in this landscape. And three, where you should be saying it. And then I'll turn it over to the real experts to talk about strategy and execution. Before I dive in, a quick word about Harry. We've been around for almost 40 years. We started out as a boutique PR agency, and over the past few years, as the landscape has evolved, so have we. We're now a fully integrated marketing agency under our CEO, Bob Knight. And one of our core beliefs is really that marketing is about influence. That's building connections between organizations and the people they need to reach. And that's what we're talking about today. So how can nonprofits build influence in this new AI-driven era? The first slide has a startling statistic. It kind of shows how the marketing landscape has changed. And so you'll see the big number there, 65%. So the way people find you is very different than it used to be. You used to type in your search into an internet browser and get a list of 10 blue links that you could click on. But think about what happens when someone searches online today. First of all, it might not be typing it. It could be a voice search, and their questions are a lot more descriptive and elaborate. So instead of seeing links and clicking through to websites, you're seeing those AI generated overviews right at the top of your search. So they might read that summary and never click at all. So over half of all internet searches are now ending without a click to your website. And on mobile, some of the industry experts are saying that's even higher, up to 80 or 90%. So for nonprofit leaders, that presents a challenge. Visibility is no longer driven by a single website or a single social channel or a single media placement. But on the flip side, you have an opportunity. You don't have to rely on a single gatekeeper either. The discovery happens across, multiple channels. Sorry, if there's just someone thank you. But before I get into those channels, if you think about the way you used to search, you might have typed in, after school programs in Westchester, and that would give you a quick result. But now people might be saying, I've got my kids home for the summer. What can I do with them if I can't afford camp? Or assisted living Westchester might become, my mother just fell, does she need a nursing home, assisted living? What's the difference? So you really want to focus on being the answer in your content. So nonprofits are actually really well positioned for this landscape because the information that AI is looking for, which is expert answers and real stories and trusted relationships, you all have those. So it's not, do you have something valuable to say? You do. The question is, are you going to show up in the places where people are looking for those answers? So if you consistently over time provide education, resources, information, and value, you will over time be influential and stay visible. And how can nonprofits adapt to this new environment? So I'm going to take to my second point, which is what to say. And that's really about being the answer. The biggest shift we're recommending is going from here's what we do to here's what you need to know. So, again, those voice searches are changing. The way we search on the internet is changing. So instead of trying to talk about every aspect of your mission, you want to think about 2 or 3 questions your organization can own. What do I mean by that? So what do people ask you repeatedly? What do donors, clients, volunteers, elected officials, what are they asking you the most? what are the topics your organization has unique expertise in and that no one else in your space does. So what's your value proposition? So that's what you really want to focus on. Once you've identified those questions that your organization should answer, let's also think about who is the best people positioned to answer them and where those answers should live. So thank you, Elijah, for putting up this visual. This is really illustrating what that visibility ecosystem is, where you should put your information. If you think about it in the way a nonprofit thinks about fundraising, you're not going to rely on a single donor for your funds, and you shouldn't rely on a single channel either. So your ecosystem has multiple layers. The slide kind of shows what it might look like for a nonprofit. So at the heart of it, your own channels includes your website and your blogs. That's really your organization's knowledge base. So when people ask a question online, whether it's through Google or one of the large language models like ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, your website should be helping to answer those questions. And Mo's going to get into some more detail on that. But while your homepage does have a lot of information, you might want to think about adding what we call anchor hubs. And that's, again, getting to those 2 to 3 key questions that your organization uniquely can answer and creating a dedicated landing page around those topics. Then if you think about all these channels, you can link to this anchor hub of content from some of those channels. So whether it's a social post on the topic, a press announcement, it might be a YouTube description. YouTube is one of the biggest search engines there is, and you can actually put a lot of questions and answers in various videos and link back to either your anchor hub or your homepage. What happens is over time, large language models start to see your organization as being the expert answer to those key questions, and it increases the likelihood that you'll surface in those AI overviews. So moving around the wheel, my background is in journalism and PR, so I'm happy to report earned media is still an important part of the ecosystem. It's actually one of the most frequently cited citations in AI will come from earned media. And you don't have to get a New York Times or a Wall Street Journal placement to have that placement have value. A mention, and even better, a backlink, which some of the hyperlocals might be inclined to give you, is a very powerful citation in AI. So whether it's Low Hut or News 12 or Rivertown's Patch, Soundshore, papers like that, those are still very valuable when it comes to establishing your organization as expert. Trade publications are very, niche publications are also really good. So if your nonprofit area, whether it's, hunger and homelessness, or it's, childcare, or it's arts and culture, may have some industry newsletters that you can submit information to. And again, that's another online authoritative source, and also very important for donors to see you in those trade sort of publications. Okay, moving around the wheel, your partners are also your visibility assets. So depending on what kind of nonprofit you are, you might partner with hospitals or libraries, school districts, municipalities, chambers, community foundations. Nonprofit Westchester is great. Jan, it shares to all the member news and events online. Those backlinks, again, are very important. So think about what can you do with your partners? Can you contribute a guest blog? Can you collaborate on a social media post? Submit a newsletter brief, speak at an event. So every time one of those organizations references you and links to your website, they're helping to validate your expertise. Getting close to handing it over. Before I do, there's one more shift we're seeing happening, and that is that people want to connect to people. Sometimes more than they want to connect with your brand or your company or your nonprofit page. So going back to that idea of influencer, you don't need to be a Kardashian with a ring light camera to have influence. So your trusted voices might be your executive director, program leaders, or even people with lived experience benefiting from your organization. People really want to know, who's behind the organization, what do they believe, and why do they care about this cause? So Jen is going to talk a little bit more about putting those voices to work. So, with all these channels, though, keep in mind that for many of your stakeholders, if they're encountering you first through someone else, you need to have a very consistent message. So, another thing we're seeing with AI and large language models is having your entity name be consistent. Don't change kind of how you refer to yourselves, colloquial in your digital presence, whether that's your Google My Business listing, your website, your social profiles. Those all need to align. So that's really important. And my final point is, why is this so important now? I mean, I'm sure that everybody here is concerned about growing uncertainty around funding, whether that's from federal sources or foundations or state grants. That's all shifting. So your digital presence is really your most scalable fundraising asset. And all these things I've talked about is your foundation, but the reality is, organic reach is only going to take you so far. I'm going to turn it over to Jen and Mo to talk about this pay-to-play world we're living in. And Elijah, I think we can take down the slides for now, and we'll just put that final illustration up at the end.
Thank you,
Jen, over
Lisa.
to you.
So Lisa talked about how the digital landscape has changed really fast over the last few years. It's even faster now. It's literally changing week by week. So what does that mean in practice? Organic reach is down across the board because AI is changing how people discover information. And as Lisa said, they may never get to your website. A lot of the old nonprofit marketing playbooks are not just performing the way they used to anymore. So when we talk about digital becoming pay to play, what that really means is platforms are prioritizing paid content more and more over unpaid organizational posts. Just a few years ago, nonprofits could post organically on Facebook or Instagram and reliably reach a large portion of their audience. That's not the reality anymore. Organic posts are seen by less than 10% of your followers, based on the algorithms on most of the big platforms. The good news is nonprofits don't need a massive budget to compete. There are organizations that are winning right now. They're the ones being strategic, more targeted, and easier to engage with digitally. So organic content still matters a lot. Paid media is just helping amplify what is already working. So with organic reach becoming harder, the natural question is what actually still works? So Mo, what are your thoughts on this?
Thanks, Jen. I have some cool thoughts I wanted to share. So one of the things that both Jen and Lisa just mentioned, with all the shifting going on in the landscape, is that organic reach is down and that people might not end up on your website. But does that mean that we stop posting organically or we stop working on our website? Absolutely not. Those are still very important assets to focus on. So one of the biggest things that still works is making sure that the digital experience is strong once people actually find you. So whether someone discovers you through social, search, email, or a paid campaign, they might end up on your website at some point. And one of the most important organic assets organizations still own is their websites. So unlike a social platform, it's a channel that you control completely. Most people are experiencing organizations or nonprofits or companies on their phone first now. So if a website is slow or if it's confusing or if it's difficult to navigate or donate through mobile, nonprofits are probably losing potential supporters very quickly. And simple navigation and clear messaging usually outperform overly complicated websites. So your website should immediately answer a few things. And those things are who you are, what you do, why it matters, and how someone can help or contribute to your organization. The other piece organizations need to be thinking about is how people are finding answers today. Back to Jen's point and Lisa's point about the click list search results. Maybe there's not the 10 blue links anymore because that process looks very different than it did even just a few years ago. So search behavior is changing dramatically because the AI will generate an answer and show these click list search results. And because we have moved beyond that traditional SEO and into answer engine optimization or AEO, that's why we're recommending those anchor hubs that Lisa talked about and structuring content around real questions that people ask. So while, someone might not end up on your website, there's still a possibility that they will. So you need to have that authority, you need to have that content on your website. And not only for the people, since the landscape is changing, you need to build that topical authority for AEO and for the AI and the LLMs as well, so that that information can be brought up to the top when people are looking for that information. Now, beyond your website, social media organic reach is changing as well. As Jen mentioned, the organic reach is down. So she made a great point. A few years ago, nonprofits could post organically on Facebook or on Instagram and reliably reach a large portion of their audience. And unfortunately, that's just not the reality anymore. But one mistake we see sometimes is nonprofits or organizations, they get discouraged with that declining reach, and then they'll post less consistently. But consistency still matters, even if every post is not a home run, right? It's not gonna, every post isn't gonna go viral, and it's all good. Social content today is really about building that trust and familiarity over time. So people may need to see your organization a few times before they ever donate, before they ever volunteer, or before they ever even engage. And what we're seeing is algorithms are prioritizing conversations and creators and entertainment and paid placements much more heavily now. So that's where the pay to play comes in. And to Lisa's point, doesn't mean you have to be a Kardashian. What tends to perform best today is that authentic, story-driven content. So especially short form video, content featuring real people and real outcomes. So comments, shares, and saves are becoming much more important than just likes. And collaborative posts with partners will amplify those posts for yourself and your partners. So Instagram has a new repost feature, for example. So if there are people that you're working closely with, then you might want to consider that on social media, for example. Now you might be thinking with organic content, how many times should I post? And I have a magic number, which is, I'm just joking, there is no magic number. You need to figure out what works best for you, for your organization. And again, just talking about consistency. So if it's 2 times a week, then you should be posting consistently 2 times a week. If it's 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, whatever makes sense for your organization, make sure it's consistent. The algorithms and these platforms hate it when you're going hard one week, you're posting, you're putting out all this great content, and then you're gone for a month. The algorithms do not like that. And then you kind of get not shadow banned, but you kind of get brought down a little bit and your content doesn't, that organic reach doesn't go as high as it could. And honestly, when it comes to content, overly polished corporate style content, it usually underperforms compared to content that simply feels human and genuine. So content that people could relate to, or they feel that kind of connection, that human connection with. And that really ties into our next point and the bigger shift that we are seeing around storytelling. So when it comes to storytelling, we want to talk about content that connects. So storytelling matters more than ever right now because it is what actually cuts through that noise. So through those influencers and through those entertainment posts, it's the storytelling that'll cut through. People connect with stories about impact, they connect with stories about transformation, and they connect with stories about real outcomes, not just, your weekly organizational updates. And one of the biggest shifts is that generic announcements tend to get ignored. You'll see a generic announcement in your feed, you're just scrolling away, you're on to the next. While specific human-centered stories perform much better. Just having someone speaking to a camera usually has more engagement. Someone will hang out on that video a little longer than just a bullet point or something that's like a quick organizational update. And a simple framework that works well for nonprofits is focusing on a few repeatable content themes. And those content themes are impact stories, so stories of how your organization may have impacted others, educational or helpful resources. So just kind of talking about that point again, be the answer, have the structured content, be the authority around all the things that you talk about. Advocacy updates, so any updates around the advocacy you're doing, and then BTS or behind the scene moments. So like what's going on in the background. And again, that's just a little extra piece of content that's that human relatability and that human connection that cuts through the noise. And every story should ideally point people towards a next step or a call to action, whether that call to action is to donate, or if it's to volunteer, to register, to attend an event, or to learn more. And the goal here is not perfection. Again, just talking about it, the goal is consistency and authenticity. So when it comes to this, great content and storytelling are what get people to pay attention. So the next question would be, once you've inspired someone to engage with your organization, how do you turn that interest or that engagement into meaningful action and long-term support? And I'll hand it over to Jen to talk about some digital fundraising.
Yeah, so digital fundraising and donor journeys look a little bit different today. Digital fundraising is really about reducing friction. It's about making it easy. We need to make it as easy as possible because if somebody gets caught up and it takes too long, it's not going to happen. If somebody's inspired to give, the process needs to feel fast, simple, and mobile friendly. Donors expect digital experiences that feel like they're online shopping. So if you're not accepting donations through like Venmo and PayPal, digital wallets, as well as online, you're missing out on a lot of potential revenue for your organization. And the messaging is really important too. So impact focused messaging consistently outperforms organizational focused messaging. Here's an example. Our organization has been providing services to families in need since 1987, serving over 10,000 individuals annually through our evidence-based programming. Probably sounds familiar because we've all done it. But the story driven would be Maria came to us with 2 kids and nowhere to go. 8 weeks later, she had stable housing, a job, and for the first time in years, a plan. That's what makes your donation possible. Same organization, same work, completely different emotional impact. So lead with the person and not the program. People respond to clear outcomes and real stories much more than institutional language. So tell your stories because that's what the people want to hear. Recurring donor programs also continually to be an incredibly important part for long-term stability. You could have a one-time donor of $25, but what if that one-time donor of $25 became a monthly donation of $25? You can better handle your projections, and all of those sorts of things. So the strongest nonprofit marketing strategies think in terms of their supporters' digital journey, not necessarily an isolated campaign. So do this today or do this weekend. Pull up your donation page on your phone or do it later. If it takes you more than 60 seconds to complete a donation, or if it feels like anything's clunky or hard to read on a small screen, that's your first fix. That one change alone can meaningfully move your conversion rate significantly higher. So we talked about the journey. Now let's talk about platform priorities and posting frequency. Where are we going to show up and how often? So one of the biggest things that we hear is we have one person doing marketing. We can't do everything. And one of the biggest misconceptions is that nonprofits need to be everywhere. You really don't. It's almost better to do 2 or 3 channels well than to try and manage 6 platforms inconsistently. We talk about consistency a lot. It's really important for the algorithms and it's really important for getting seen. So for most nonprofits, Facebook, Instagram, and email are still the core channels. We see LinkedIn becoming increasingly valuable for partnerships, corporate outreach, board recruitment, and major donors. And as Lisa mentioned, we're seeing the executive thought leadership perform really well right now. Leadership voices are getting more visibility than organization pages themselves. So on LinkedIn, leadership content receives actually double the engagement and triple the comments of a company or organizational account. So if you want to do something, try this rule we have. It's called the 1-3-5 rule. Have your executive director and the program leaders try it. Create 1 meaningful post per week, something that shares a perspective or tells a story, not a press release, not something, generic. Then leave 3 thoughtful comments on other people's posts. And finally, engage with 5 other posts with likes or reactions. And that will actually give signals to the platforms that you're engaging as well, so it'll prioritize you higher. Some of you are probably thinking, well, what about TikTok? What about YouTube? They're absolutely worth paying attention to, especially if you're trying to reach younger audiences. Short form video is growing really fast, and we're seeing some nonprofits do really creative and authentic work there. And this is a big but. Only do it if you have the capacity to show up consistently. If you have a TikTok account with 3 videos from 2023, that's doing more harm than good. So get your core channels right and then expand. Let's talk a little bit about email. It's one of the most valuable assets that nonprofits own because you fully control that audience. And email is only as powerful as how well you use it. And that means segmenting your lists. I know some of you are probably gasping, like, no, I don't want to do that. It's going to be a nightmare. But people don't want the same message. Your donors, your volunteers, your newsletter subscribers all have a different relationship with you, and they should hear from you differently. Even something as simple as separating first-time donors from recurring donors can make a huge difference. One wants to feel inspired and welcomed. One wants to feel appreciated and informed. So you don't need to be a tech expert to do this. Most platforms have it pretty easy. So as Mo said, there's no magic number in posting. What matters is consistency over volume. 2 to 4 times a week is a good starting point, maybe twice a month for email. So do something that you can manage and stick with. That's the most important thing. And don't feel like you need to create new content every day. One good story can go a long way. Say you interview a program participant about how your organization changed their life. That one conversation can become Instagram Reels, a LinkedIn post, a newsletter email, and a blog post on your website. So that's 6 pieces of content for one 30-minute conversation. So Mo, why don't you talk a little bit about the opportunities happening on the community-driven online platforms?
Absolutely. So thank you, Jen. You talked about Instagram, LinkedIn, email, all these great platforms. That's really important. But there are other community platforms that are really important. So there's platforms like Reddit and Nextdoor, and they're really interesting because they are much more community first and follower first. On LinkedIn, we're looking at how many followers we have. On Instagram, we're looking at how many followers we have. Reddit and Nextdoor are not like that. They're very community focused. They're conversation focused. So people go there looking for recommendations. They go there looking for local conversations and authentic discussion. I myself use Reddit. I myself use Nextdoor if I'm looking for local recommendations or if I'm going through a problem that someone else might have, done on Reddit and I find a subreddit, someone's like, "Oh yeah, I've dealt with this and this is how I took care of it." Whatever. It's a great place to show up and have a discussion. The key is showing up as a helpful participant. So you're not showing up as a brand that's trying to advertise or push a sale, especially on Reddit. Organizations need that lighter touch. You have to contribute value first or show how you contribute value to people. And then when it comes to Nextdoor, it can work incredibly well for local nonprofits, volunteer opportunities, neighborhood initiatives, community events. People go on to Nextdoor looking for these things or what's happening in their neighborhoods. And sometimes these smaller niche communities actually outperform larger platforms because the engagement tends to be much more intentional and trust driven. So people are going there for a reason and they have a reason to be there rather than just spending time scrolling on Instagram and LinkedIn as we all do. Now, of course, organic alone usually is not enough anymore, which brings us into paid media. And I just want to make a quick note here. So this is the changing landscape that we're seeing, and we're going to talk about pay to play and how that's important. But it was also important to talk about how, AI is also looking at Reddit, for example. So if your organization is showing up on Reddit, showing value, then there's a possibility that someone might ask LLM a question, and that LLM is looking at Reddit and it sees your answer come up and it shows, you as a topical authority. So that's something that we have to keep in mind too. But again, organic alone is usually not enough anymore, which I'll hand back to Jen to talk to us about pay to play or paid media.
Yeah, so if you pay for ads, you get more organic love from the platforms. It's they say it doesn't happen, but it does. We've seen it with clients across the board. If you run ads in combination with organic, your organic results are better as well. So one thing we always want nonprofits to hear is that you don't need a huge budget to start seeing results. You could boost a post for $100 and get it amplified, that much more. So a small campaign, a focus campaign can increase visibility and awareness, event registrations, volunteer signups, or donations. The key is really clarity and targeting. Broad campaigns often underperform, say, compared to smaller campaigns with a very specific audience. We like to say narrow focus, broad success, rather than blanketing the county with a generic announcement with all your upcoming events. Maybe target pet lovers with a certain radius of an event for an animal rescue event. So paid campaigns are really effective around fundraising pushes, awareness months, events, and major announcements. And before you increase your out-of-pocket spend, you should maximize things like nonprofit discounts, platform credits, and the Google Ads grant. Now, many people don't know about the Google Ads grant, but they give nonprofits up to $10,000 a month in free advertising on their platform. So if you go to google.com/grants and apply, if you haven't, you've really got nothing to lose and potentially $10,000 a month in advertising to gain. So When we do invest in paid media, there's an important distinction between boosting posts and building actual campaigns. Boosting a post can absolutely be useful for quick and visible engagement, but structured campaigns give organizations more control over targeting, objectives, retargeting, and tracking. And I can't say this enough, set up your tracking properly so you can monitor your KPIs that move the needle for your organization. Figure out how many people are signing up for the newsletter, how many are registering for an event. This will make it more efficient for you in the future to use that data to put your money and your time where it's working. So, Mo, talk about a little bit about analytics and measurement, actually.
Absolutely, yeah. Metrics and measuring success is huge. Now, I don't know if some of you can relate to this. I've heard this where someone will tell me I started a boosted campaign or I started a paid campaign and my ROAS or my return on ad spend was trash or I did not see the value. And the thing is, what we have to do is we're making sure we are looking at the measurement. We're tracking success. We're looking at metrics. And why is that? It's to maximize those budgets. So these are metrics that will help you optimize the campaigns along the way. So you see, one ad set or one copy or something working, maybe you're putting more money towards that. You're looking at awareness metrics. Those might include reach, impression, or video views. You're looking at engagement metrics. Those are things like comments, shares, and saves. And conversion metrics, those are the big ones like donations or volunteer form fills or registrations or email signups. So instead of focusing too heavily on vanity metrics, organizations should really look at those meaningful actions and what the cost per result is for those meaningful actions and how that awareness to their nonprofit is being driven. Even reviewing a small handful of metrics consistently every month can create much better decision making over time. So one of the biggest missed opportunities, for example, is we see organizations running paid ads without proper conversion tracking in place. So like, yeah, we're spending money, but we don't see anything coming out of it. It's because the platform isn't learning that when someone hits that donate now button, that's what we want to see. So now the platform can optimize towards that outcome. Tools like Metapixel and the LinkedIn Insight tag are really important, and it helps nonprofits or other organizations measure actual outcomes instead of just impressions or clicks. So impressions are great for awareness, clicks are great, people are actually engaging, but what's next? Are they taking the next meaningful action? So the goal should always be understanding what is driving that meaningful action, and that will help you ultimately maximize your budget. And we understand that, when it comes to your organizations, you might not have a lot of budget, so you want to use that money very wisely. I'll pass it back to Lisa.
So Elijah, you can just put up that last slide if you don't mind about just kind of tying it all together about that going from the visibility ecosystem and what it means for nonprofits. The visibility really drives support. Yes, Mo, we want to measure, but really we know that you have to maximize your precious fundraising dollars. So that's really kind of key to the measurement. And Jen, when you were talking about content types, I could hear some voices in my head. I know that it's not always easy to get people to go on video. Maybe your end users, people with lived experience don't want to share their stories or can't, or you don't have an executive director that doesn't like to go on video. But I'm looking at some people on this call who are probably very comfortable in front of the camera. So, just think about who those spokespeople can be and ambassadors can be to get to tell their stories on video. The tools are just so easy now. If you have a good iPhone or, you can really record some good content and share it. So just to leave you, because now we only have 20 minutes for questions, visibility, content, paid media measurement, it's not just marketing, it really is the beginning of your relationship with all of your stakeholders. So that, we have all these new AI tools now, different ways of showing up and being visibility, but the channels have changed, but the fundamentals really haven't. It's about credibility. It's about being authentic. It's about telling good stories and sharing your expertise with your audiences. So, worry less about chasing every new platform and trend and stay focused, stay consistent, and continue to build that trust over time. So with that, we do want to open it up, hear what's on your mind.
Wow, that was amazing. So Elijah, you can take down the slide, please, because we don't need that anymore. I don't see any questions in the chat, but first I want to thank the three of you because this was an incredible learning experience for me and so well done. And now the chat is populating as I expected. that it would. So, um, can you talk about supporting development appeals on social? We do some multi-channel campaigns and the supporting social posts really fall flat, even with compelling images, text, etc. And that was from Jennifer. I'm going to butcher your last name. But Jennifer, why don't you just unmute for a second and please
Yes.
pronounce it
Hi.
correctly the first time?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I work for Green Chimneys. We have a very large fundraising operation here. I shouldn't say very large, it's a nonprofit, but it's pretty good. So our marketing department, a big chunk of our work is to support that as well as represent the entire agency and services. We with a prior direct mail agency we worked with, part of the strategy was to kind of have paper direct mail supported by e-versions, which went to our own list, sometimes prospecting lists. Some of it was recurring donations, some of it was acquisition. And then the newer strategy was to also support these digital campaigns through social posts. So it was pulling copy. We have really good stories. We like a lot of what you've talked about is a lot of what we do because we have these really good student and animal stories. And then we would have these great images and very short. The advice that we got at the time was, briefer copy, very inspiring, good little snippets, and then driving to a donation link. We got virtually nothing from that. We really don't know all the time.
Sorry, Jennifer, because I just want to like maybe move it along a little bit.
Sorry, yes, of course.
Questions. I didn't want to butcher your last name. I'm so glad Green Chimneys is here. The question is clear. What wasn't? I just didn't want to pronounce your last name incorrectly. So if you could just
Malillo.
Malillo. A really important question, and I'm going to bring it back to the experts to answer because
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. Are you using any paid media to boost those posts? Because the likelihood is that people aren't seeing them or the targeting might be off.
We did not do any paid on the social channels. We have a Google ad grant and we do put ads on those campaigns because often some of these campaigns would have designated web pages. So we would be driving ads to those. We've done different things to kind of try different strategies. I will admit to maybe we haven't done any of them long enough to really measure them against campaigns. And not all the campaigns were done uniformly. They would serve different purposes. But specifically the social is like, how could they not? And there was one that people actually responded to very well for our therapy cat. But it was, but the other ones really just didn't seem to turn much, certainly not really in the conversion area.
You probably had low impressions because, for example, on LinkedIn, I think between 5 and 7% of your audience see a post. So you're just not getting the penetration. If you put, $50, $100 behind that post and boost it to the targeted audience that you think will be those donors, those volunteers, I think you'll get a lot more traction that way.
Yeah, I
It's
also
a
worried
little
that they
step,
were.
but it makes a big difference.
I also worried that they were maybe too brief, and people who are not getting the direct mail itself, they're not associating it enough. And again, I think maybe it required a little more experimentation with that. How much of the story in the post, and we can relook at that in the coming fiscal year for ourselves. So
Yeah, and link it back to the website. If there's a page where it has that information that you would have had in the printed thing, that would be great to do as well.
yeah, we recently changed our e-commerce system, which is gonna facilitate that as well.
Great.
So yeah, I kind of new year, but this is still good to hear, and maybe we won't throw the concept away, but we might need to do it differently.
Going to move on to
And
the
Jen,
next
did
question.
you mention, Jen, lists as well? Because I think you mentioned it earlier, if you have your contact list, we can import it into various platforms and create what's called a lookalike list, right? That's another useful tool for targeting.
Yeah,
To take our e-marketing list, our digital, like what's in constant contact, and mirror that in social.
you can actually upload your contact lists and either advertise directly to your members, or you could create a lookalike audience with profiles that are very similar And
Okay.
you'll have an audience almost exactly like yours that hasn't been talked to, by you yet.
I didn't think I wouldn't think something like that is permissible, but we can look into that.
They
Okay.
randomize the data, but they do match the names and they match the emails and
Huh.
companies. So we get
That's
a
the
good.
best advice I've gotten in months. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you
Cool.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for that great question. So we're going to move on. We have, what are thoughts about print mailing? What is the weakness or the strength possible of this?
Jen, please, and Mo, please jump in. But depending on your audience, it's still a really valuable tool. If you're depending on the services you're providing, we worked with a client recently who were targeting some energy programs to an older audience, and we actually helped them develop a mailer with a segmented list to certain apartment complexes in parts of the county. So, if you have a very narrow focus, broad success, niche audience to a niche group to a target area, print can be very effective, coupled with other things.
Yeah, and to
Any,
add to that really
yeah.
quickly, I was just wanted to say, Jen made a great point about segmenting your email list so that, your donor, your monthly donor, your weekly donor, they're getting different messages. That's the same way with other audiences you have. So if you know that you have an audience that'll be on digital, your focus might be on digital. But if you have an audience, your organization is focusing on this, like Lisa mentioned, older individuals living in this certain neighborhood, energy program, then you would want to use print mailing. So you just really need to segment your audiences yourself and realize or recognize what works best for them.
And sorry, one last point on messaging. If there's a partner that um, if there's someone you can co-brand with or partner with that would make that message be more credible to your audience. We talk a lot about credible messengers. So if that the energy program was in partnership with the municipality and that resident was to see the municipality's logo alongside yours on the print mailing, it might be better received. So just again, think about your affiliations, your partners, your other organizations you can team up with on things.
Okay, next question from Laura Newman. What if you have nothing new to say 2 times a week? Should we still post with a slightly different perspective?
Okay, when the day comes when Laura Newman has nothing new to say, I don't know.
I was gonna say, I doubt that the Child Care Council and Laura Newman have nothing new to say,
Yeah.
but
I mean, and I'd love to hear from Jen and Mo too, but we talk a lot about, just making the most, maximizing your content. So if you have written one thought leadership piece that makes multiple points, you can record a video on each one of those points. The videos don't have to be long, 20, 30 seconds. You can newsjack what's going on in the news that has to do with childcare. There's new legislation. There's a program that's similar to yours in another state. Maybe you're a model program that's inspired. So there's always something to talk about. It's kind of like paying attention to what's going on in the greater news ecosystem, chunking out bigger, longer pieces of content for shorter purposes. You've got a partner you can interview. There's always something. And I'll be happy to brainstorm with you.
great. That was a good question and surprising from you, Laura. Uh, how can we do a low-cost media checkup to see how we're doing?
You mean like in AI or in search or I mean there are sites where you can go and like SEMrush, you could check your AI standings, how many times you're being cited, where you're being cited. It will give you the questions of how you're being found. Um, there's also free website checkers online. If you just search for free website checkup, it'll tell you how you're doing with SEO and AEO.
Hmm.
So there are free resources out there.
Yeah, it's just hard for non-specialists to find them or to find a good one.
We could add a couple to our slides before we send it
Yeah,
out.
great. That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, just comment on that real quick. When it comes to organic, maybe you use something like SEMrush that Jen mentioned, or something called Google Search Console that'll show what people are asking before they get to your website. And then on the paid side, I would just say, a good checkup would be to look at those metrics that we were talking about. So, if you're posting, or if you're paying for ads, what's working? Are you seeing those numbers go up? Are you seeing more engagement as you continue posting? So that's a good checkup as well, just within the native platforms.
Thank you.
Um, Dawn Norris, thank you for your time. Can you share 2 to 3 websites that would be good examples of answering the 4 questions that Mo addressed earlier?
So I don't have any at the top of my mind, Lisa and Jen. I don't know if you do, but I saw that question come in. So I was looking online and I feel like I saw a few good ones like um, Feeding America. The content is there. There's a lot going on. It tells you who they are, what they do right off the bat. You don't have to click around too much. I think there was another one, just get my charitywater.org, kind of same thing. There's a lot of good information right off the bat. But these are just some that I found really quickly as that question came in. And
Can
it
you
is
can you put that in the slides that we're going
Yeah,
to
I just want to
send
make
you?
sure I understand the question. For websites that are good examples of answering key questions that do a good job of
I'll chime in
presenting?
if you want.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, I'm outside, so I'm hoping the landscaper doesn't start. No, no. You had cited those like 4 questions that we should really consider dialing in on, and we're actually going through a transformation with our own website. So it's just like kind of just a point of reference that really kind of immediately you kind of look at it like, yes, I know what this is. Oh, it's starting. So that's all. So if you had it, like you mentioned a couple, if you could just throw them in the chat, that would be just, I always like examples. So
Yeah, we'll definitely try to add some to our
that
slides.
would be wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you. Next question. What do you need to set up something like Pixel? Can a tech-savvy marketer get this connected, or do you recommend developer support?
so truly it just depends on how your personal website was set up. To just straight up answer your question, absolutely, a tech savvy marketer can do it. There's a lot of great videos, there's a lot of great articles, a lot of great stuff just easily findable on Google. And you could tell by the date that it was posted that it's a more recent way of doing things. However, the reason I say how your website was set up, without getting into too much detail, if you have like a tag container like Google Tag Manager, it's really a copy paste thing, the pixel from Facebook into your website. If you don't have a Google Tag Manager container, and when it comes to website updates or changes, you usually talk to your developer anyway, then it's best bet to just talk to your developer.
If you do have a WordPress website, also there are things like Pixel Your Site. There are plugins that you could just add to your website, put the code in, and it does it all for you.
But absolutely, a tech savvy marketer can figure it out for sure.
Yeah, you could figure it out.
We have Squarespace. Is that similar to WordPress? To It's a plugin?
They probably have a plugin for it. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Carmen, Rocco, great presentation content. Can you please repeat the 1-3-5 rule example?
Sure. So you create one meaningful post per week, something that tells a story or shares your perspective or answers a question. Leave 3 thoughtful comments on other people's posts, and engage with 5 posts with either likes or reactions.
And I would add to that, what do we mean by meaningful post? Linked on LinkedIn, we tend to share obviously things about work, but we're all humans behind our work. So is there something, doesn't mean you have to share your vacation photos, but something personal that relates to your work. So, if you're a divorce attorney and you got into the business because you had not a good experience yourself growing up, and you that inspired you to go into this line of work. Maybe there's something you can share. You're leading a nonprofit board for, finding a cure for a rare disease because you're affected about it by your family, and you share a little bit about that. It's really just about revealing a little bit about yourself as a human being that people can relate to on an authentic level. So I guess that's what we mean by meaningful post. It doesn't have to be something about your industry necessarily. It can be industry adjacent.
Great. So I actually have a question. First of all, I do want to answer Patty's question. Yes, the recording will be available. And this is kind of a big question, but with all of this, we nonprofits have board members and staff, and how do we work to get them all really juiced up about this and to participate? I almost feel that, when we give out our board roles and responsibilities that our board members sign off on, that they should agree to this type of training and should agree to support these efforts as part of fundraising and resource development. Like we need them to do this. They are impressive people in our community and they can help expand the reach. So maybe I'm giving a little bit of what I would want to say, but yeah, like just juicing them up. I feel like your data and showing them would be so great. So maybe I'm inviting you to present to my board. But anyway, yeah, any thoughts on that?
Agree, 1,000%. A lot of organizations will create kind of social media ready posts for their board members to share. I think getting them to sign off on something like that, or even participating in a quick, everyone come at the next board meeting. Could you invite people to stay after the board meeting and record a few words about what their involvement in your organization means to them? I think thinking about your board as ambassadors is really a great idea.
Hmm. I'm feeling another program boiling up in my head.
Stand
Um,
back, everybody.
yeah. So I want to just give Lisa and Mo and Jen back the Zoom floor for now. We're coming to a close. This was really an exceptional way for me to end the week. I have to say, you knocked it out of the park, even more than I expected. Really grateful. There was so much information, and what particularly for Harry, to share this information so generously is unusual, for a professional for-profit organization. So really thank you for this, and please feel free to close it out with any of your comments. And thank you to all the nonprofits in the room for the work you do. So it's all yours.
Yeah, no, it's been a real pleasure. We thank you so much for being a great partner and a great leader in this county. And it's been a really, really fun morning, and happy to our contact information will be on the slide. So please reach out to any of us individually. And Jen and Mo, any closing thoughts?
Thank you. This was great.
Yeah, thank you everyone for your time. We hope we gave you that value.
You
Get out and
certainly
enjoy
did.
this weather.
Yeah, enjoy the weather.
Have a great weekend, everyone. Again, thank you to the team at
Thank
Harry.
you.
It was
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
grand
Bye-bye.
slam.